Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I figured I might as well go ahead and compare the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 6 in 2020. I've compared the iPhone 7 to a bunch of different phones, and the iPhone 6 was one of those phones that have actually built up this channel quite a bit. Luckily, I had an iPhone 6 laying around early on in my channel and I made a ton of videos on it, and one of my most popular videos are still about the iPhone 6, so I know a lot of people still own it. They want to see how it compares to some newer iPhones, and they might be looking at the iPhone 7. I will tell you right now though, if you currently own an iPhone 6 or if you're just watching the video or whatever, I would recommend you to at least go to an iPhone 6s. That phone is almost probably going to get iOS 14 as far as we know, which is going to be a huge plus. The iPhone 6, even though it's still getting security updates, which is still a really big deal and it's still kind of supported, going to an iPhone 6s will probably end up doing you better in the long run. But there's really cool advantages of keeping both phones too. But in the used market, the iPhone 6s are going for about like $100, a little bit less than 100, I'd say around $80 to $70. An iPhone 7 right now on Amazon you can pick up for about $144, which is really good. That's really not too crazy up there. The phone is still getting support, which is really cool. The iPhone 6s I think are selling for about $100 to $110 on Amazon. So I'll leave a 7 and a 6s link down below if you guys want to pick them up from there and help support the channel at the same time. And those are going to be one of the biggest differences you're going to find going from an iPhone 6 to an iPhone 7. It's going to be the price tag for sure, but you're still getting quite a bit of a phone between those two for sure. Now in terms of the front, they are almost identically the same. The iPhone 6 has that 4.7-inch IPS panel. It is 750p and it's a pretty decent panel at the end of the day. I think, I don't think it's a horrible panel, but compared to what we have nowadays, it definitely is not the best in the market, and it's not even good for a budget phone of this day and age. The iPhone 8s and potentially the iPhone SE's panel that's coming out this week, hopefully, that panel is a little bit different because you do have that True Tone technology on it, which is really cool. But compared to a lot of other phones in the budget market, even the iPhone 6 panel just isn't really cutting it. And I could almost say that same exact thing for the iPhone 7's panel. You still have that same 4.7-inch display, that Retina IPS panel, the 750p, exactly the same resolution as the iPhone 6. Now apparently the brightness is a little bit better on the iPhone 7. I'm not really too sure. I mean, I'm like 50-50 on it. Like, yeah, it could be a little bit better, but still in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that crazy of a difference. They're both almost exactly the same, exact same resolution and all that stuff. So what I'll tell you is the panel size, I mean, yeah, the panels are almost the same, but you do have Force Touch on the iPhone 7, which is really cool. It's kind of funny though, because now we don't have any Force Touch on any of the new phones. So there were generations that had 3D Touch and now they don't. But the 6 does not have any Force Touch or 3D Touch, which might not be a big deal to you, but just kind of a funny thing to kind of keep in mind. Both have Touch ID on the bottom. However, the iPhone 7 does have Touch ID too, which is honestly not crazy better, but it is something that kind of, that edges it up a little bit. So for sure, at the end of the day, I think the iPhone 7 will probably do you better in the front. The iPhone 7 also has two really cool things on the exterior, which I'll get into in a second. But the first thing's on the front. You have that front-facing speaker that the iPhone 6 does not have. And a lot of people might not even know that the iPhone 7 actually does have a front-facing speaker up top. It has downward and upwards, which is really cool. So you do have that kind of stereo effect, which is really awesome. The iPhone 6 does not have any type of capability like that, which isn't a big deal. You still have a speaker on it, but the iPhone 7 speaker definitely is a better one. On the bottom, lightning port on the iPhone 7. The iPhone 6 has that headphone jack, which is really cool. A lot of people might not care about it, but that is one thing, especially in 2020. The more ports you have, the better, but we're slowly getting rid of the ports, which is kind of sad. But the iPhone 6 does have that headphone jack. On the back, kind of the same setup, but kind of different. You can see the 6 has that kind of older design. The 7 has that newer one. You do have single camera setups on both, which, that is a single camera setup. I wish it had more, but these phones were released, a couple years ago, so it's not that big of a deal. Now, the iPhone 6 does not have any IP certification on it, which might not be a big deal to a lot of people, but if you spill a little bit of water on it, you have the potential of actually breaking it or breaking it or whatever the case is. There's really not too many things you can go around when you submerge it in water and it breaks when you get water damage on it. That's not really a good situation to be in. A lot of things you can repair, but that one is a very tricky situation. The iPhone 7, on the other hand, you are able to have some IP certification on it. It has IP67 dust and water resistance, which is really cool. So you can dip it up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes, and that's a lot better than not having any at all. So in terms of the outside and the exterior, the iPhone 7 definitely gets my thumbs up, and I think is the better exterior, phone and overall. The iPhone 6, they might look the same, but definitely the 7 is the winner here. Now moving on to the software, the iPhone 6 started off with iOS 8, and it went all the way up to iOS 12, and right now we're on 12.4.6 on it, which is really impressive. this thing technically stopped getting support last year for full OS version, so it didn't get iOS 13, but it's still getting security updates, which is really cool. Whenever something happens security-wise, the iPhone 6 gets those same security updates too, which is really, really awesome. So even though this thing didn't get the iOS 13 features, it's still getting a lot of those security updates that makes the iPhone 6 and the 5S both very, very secure in today's standards, which is really, really cool. The iPhone 7, on the other hand, started off with iOS 10.0.1. We are able to get iOS 13 on it. Right now it's on 13.4.1, and so far every single version I've ran on both of these phones have handled it pretty well. iOS 11 was pretty rocky on both devices, but since then I haven't really had any issues with either phones really. However, what I will tell you though is the iPhone 7 for some reason gives me so much of a headache every time I try to do anything with it. When it comes to updating the software, sometimes it breaks, sometimes I have to factory reset it, sometimes I have to do a lot of crazy stuff. So the iPhone 6, I never really had to experience that. It's not an insanely crazy thing. I've heard a lot of people say bad things about both these phones, but personally I've experienced it more so on the iPhone 7 than the iPhone 6, which is weird because the iPhone 7 is a newer device between them and it's more expensive, so I'm not really too sure, but that is one thing to keep in mind. A huge thing between both phones though is that they are supported under that checkrange jailbreak, which is a really, really cool thing. You can jailbreak either of these phones using those methods, whether you have an Windows machines, a Linux machine, or Mac machine. You can really jailbreak it on any of those ones. I have a couple tutorials on how to do that on my main channel and my second channel, but both of these phones support those jailbreaks, which is a really awesome thing. So say what you will, but you do have modding capabilities on both of these, which is really awesome. So in terms of software support, the iPhone 7 definitely wins here, but the iPhone 6, you gotta give it some credit here for getting some security updates too. Now that pretty much covers it up there. Now hitting on the performance side of things, the iPhone 6 has the Apple A8 chip, a dual-core CPU with a couple different models. All of them have 1GB of RAM, where the iPhone 7 has that Apple A10 Fusion chip, a quad-core CPU, and a couple different models as well with 2GB of RAM. What I can tell you about the performances is that, the iPhone 6, when it came out, I'm sure it was a pretty fast phone, but where it stands now, it's really not that good of a performing phone if I'm being honest. There's been situations where I've seen the iPhone 6 not being able to even keep up sometimes with an iPhone 5S, which is pretty crazy because that phone is even older. So I will say the iPhone 6, it was a big change coming from, the design and everything, but as it stands in performance-wise, I don't think it's that great of a performing phone in 2020, and I don't think that's a secret to a lot of you. I think you all know where I stand on that. I think at one point, maybe for the first 2 years or 3 years it was out, it was a good performing phone, but then the software updates kind of got in the way and it kind of slowed it down quite a bit. Whereas on the iPhone 7, it has great performance for a 2016 phone. It handles really everything I throw at it perfectly fine. Yeah, it's not like the best performing phone anymore, but it's not the newest phone either, so you have to kind of keep that in mind. I think when every time I compared it to the latest and greatest, like the iPhone XS or the iPhone 11 at those times, it pretty much handled everything for the most part. Like I said, it's not the fastest thing anymore, but it's also not the most expensive thing anymore. And between the 6 and the 7, the iPhone 7 definitely handles the performance better in the long run than the iPhone 6 will. So performance-wise, iPhone 7 definitely wins. Now hitting on the cameras, the iPhone 6 has a single 8 megapixel camera on the back, the iPhone 7 has a single 12 megapixel camera on the back, and by far the iPhone 7 definitely wins here, not only in terms of quality and all that stuff, but the iPhone 7 has the capability of shooting 4K videos at 30 frames, and that's a really big deal. The iPhone 6 does not have that capability. It's not an end-all be-all, it's not anything crazy, but if you are somebody who wants to keep their phone for a long time, 4K is pretty much the norm at this point, and if you don't have 4K on your camera, that's a pretty big deal. We now have phones like the Samsung Galaxy S20 that can shoot 8K videos, so yeah, it's not a humongous deal. I'm sure not a lot of people even shoot 4K videos. I don't even shoot 4K videos, but in the future, there could be a demand for that, and if you future-proof yourself now, you won't have to go and update your phone for a couple of years. So for sure, by far, the iPhone 7 definitely wins in the camera standpoint. Now ending it off with the battery life, the iPhone 6 has a 1,810 mAh battery, the iPhone 7 has a 1,960 mAh battery, so there's not a crazy difference between here, and I will probably tell you maybe the iPhone 6 might have slightly better battery life. It was something about that A8 chip that just, made it a little bit better than the A10 Fusion chip in my opinion. I think the iPhone 7's battery life is still really good, but there's also been a lot of problems with the iPhone 7's battery, which, is more of a hardware thing than just like the battery life itself. So I might side with the iPhone 6 if both were brand new, but because the iPhone 6 is the older one, there's more of a chance that the battery degraded a lot more, so maybe the iPhone 7 will win, but one doesn't blow the other one out of the water by far. Now to kind of sum up the video and say answer the question, should you pick up the iPhone 6 in 2020? Should you pick up the iPhone 7? By far I would 100% recommend picking up an iPhone 7 over an iPhone 6 any day. If you're in a situation where you currently own an iPhone 6, even going up to an iPhone 6s will help you out and future-proof yourself for quite a bit of time, if I'm being honest. That will definitely leave you in a better situation than the iPhone 6. However, if you have the money to spend, get an iPhone 7. However, if you have a little bit more money to spend, I would recommend picking up an iPhone 8 in 2020. That one is a very good phone. Even though the SE is coming out, the iPhone 8s you can pick up on Amazon for I think less than $350, which is still a really good deal in my opinion. So I'll leave all those linked down below if you want to get them from there. That'd be awesome. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.